Lights, camera, action. We are live here to chat about all of the TV and other like non-TV things that we've watched in the last couple weeks at this point. We're reaching that part of spring where we're approaching even summer shows. Low-key, I have a very soft spot in my heart for summer shows on account of me liking things that are absolute garbage. So we'll be talking a little bit about that tonight. But most importantly, when we approach summer, we approach a ton of news. And I happen to know that we do have a ton of news tonight. So, Kate, Carey, how are you guys? And what news do you bring me?
I'm good. I bring tons of period drama news because we have Bridgerton coming up in the next week. So excited for that. It's going to be a show.
It's going to
We
be a whole
also
show.
have
Well, it's going to be half
a
a show.
whole show. It's going to be a whole show. Um, we also have kind of continued discourse online about the Duke leaving from the Scarlet and the Duke, which is interesting and it's fun to watch. But that kind of leads into other PBS news, PBS masterpiece. Miss Scarlet and the Duke, and now it's just Miss Scarlet. Season
Yes.
5 is filming. Actually, I think it's done filming now. All Creatures is filming season 5. They've also announced for Scythe Saga, they're making a new adaptation of that for Masterpiece,
Uh huh.
as well as a Wolf Hall sequel and a show called Miss Austen. So Masterpiece is going to have all my money. They're going to have every single cent of it.
I'm so excited. There's literally nothing better in the summer than like a cozy period drama. And when I say cozy, I mean it lures you in under the guise of like this is gonna be like so cozy and like mindless and like aesthetic and vibey, and then it'll like rip your heart out and we'll be screaming at each other about it in like no time. So
Mhm.
best possible con, basically like a Victorian era Rickroll. I'm so excited. Carrie, what about you? What have you brought for us?
First of all, I am doing fantastic and good evening, folks. Um, I don't have a lot of news, quote unquote news, but obviously the Met Gala sort of took over the universe as it was last night. It's I don't know any sort of history about the Met Gala, but the fashion is generally fantastic, avant-garde, and it was no different last night. I think the theme was like I had to Google it. It was like Garden of Time, right?
Uh-huh.
So you had people dressing up. I think there were like evil forest witches and ethereal nymphs and that sort of whole vibe. There was a is it wooden or is it not wooden bodice as one of the outfits, and I'm thinking to myself, like this really looks great for television and sort of like form, but like you can't sit in that thing, right? But who cares? They look great. And I wish I knew names. I wish I was better at it. But there was like somebody, I think she might have been in the Dune movie, who was wearing a sand dress. I kid
Mm-hmm.
you not. And I'm thinking to myself, there had to have been a team of people making sure that sand stayed where it needed to stay and there
Uh-huh.
were no wardrobe malfunctions. But it's the Met Gala. I mean, you get what you get. Um, but it was a visual feast, and I am glad to have seen it. That was last night, if I'm not mistaken. The other bit of news I don't know if I notified you about it, and it's probably been within the last couple of days to probably the last week or so, but they have shot, if I'm not mistaken, the season slash series finale for Superman and Lois. So if I'm not mistaken, that is in the can, and hopefully the expectation is that they will start showing the episode sometime this fall to wrap up I think it's an 8 or 10 episode season for to wrap up the series, and I can't wait to watch.
I'm so excited for the final season or half season or whatever we're calling it for Superman and Lois. I think they're going to do a really good job with it. I know Superman has had its highs and lows, but it was more highs than lows, at least in my colored glasses memory. And I did see I don't know if this is spoilers, I don't think it is. I did see some rumors going around that there will be some other Arrowverse cast on the Superman and Lois finale, which makes sense. I mean, if it's the last hurrah, anybody around to show up for it is probably showing up for it. So that'll be exciting.
One other half piece of news. If you have not seen it floating around the socials, there was a new picture of David Cornsweet, who is the new Superman. There
Mhm.
is it's drawing all sorts of applause and slash criticism, as you expect some sort of significant property to generate. But I think it's a fantastic picture. It sort of demonstrates the dichotomy of what Superman is. It's like a fantastical person living in sort of grounded world for the most part. And I think the picture captures it. I just think it's sort of an interesting picture. It's a picture of Superman sitting sort of in like a living room or a loft or whatever the case may be, with this sort of big window behind him, and he's putting on his pair of boots and has sort of the look on his face of, "Yep, I'm Superman, putting on my uniform, getting ready to go to work like everyone else." And there just happens to be perhaps some world-ending cataclysm right outside my window. I'll get to it when I get to it. I think it's a great picture. But obviously, there are people on both sides thinking it's the greatest thing they've ever seen, and some people thinking, why isn't Superman more, why isn't he jumping too quickly? But it's done what it's needed to do. It's generated some buzz. So uh, mission accomplished.
Yeah. I think it'll be fun to enter a new era now that we've got, myself included, past that phase of like, but I think we should have done it that way, and I think we should have done it that, like we're emotionally burnt out. I'm emotionally burnt out from that. And it's just time to like, okay, whatever you're doing, show us at this point and we'll judge accordingly. So there's been the right amount of time that's passed to where I think we'll give this incarnation a shake, a fair shake. Who's entitled to a fair shake? Not men, certainly, but we'll give it a shake. Regarding the Met Gala, there were some incredible looks, and you mentioned how you feel like maybe over time, and I don't know that any of us necessarily are like the fashion experts where we can speak on this. I'm sure I could have just Googled it, but I didn't. Over time, it seems like they've gotten more over the top and more avant-garde and more. The looks for the Met Gala from when it first started, and just in the like last few years where I've been paying attention to it, that certainly seems to be the case. But maybe because of that, and maybe because of the heightened expectations, I feel like this last time around, with the whole like Sleeping Beauty Garden of Time, it was like a Sleeping Beauty-esque short story that it was based off of, and the Garden of Time theme and all of that. I really feel like a lot of people knocked it out of the park. Yes, there were a couple misses, or if it's not it may not be a miss. I just may be too dumb to understand it. There were a few that seemed kind of lackluster to me. But overall, I felt like this year there were a lot of people, including men, rising to the occasion and doing something interesting with their fashion. Not everybody, but a lot. Well, the only piece of news I bring is not new news, but it did happen since we last talked. The Tortured Poets Department dropped, which ended up being essentially like two albums, 31 songs. I know we had a lot of speculation, really even just internally about like, okay, what's this going to be? What's the vibe going to be? Who's this going to be about? And I'm actually kind of glad that we're talking about it later, that we're not getting to talk about it in like the week right after it dropped, because it gives us a little bit more time to like absorb, the music, the messages, the lyrics, all of that, because it was a lot of songs. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about it. And when I say you, I do mean both of you, both Kate, who I know you've listened to every single song and, have likely analyzed the lyrics to some extent, and Carey, who you're probably just absorbing it through osmosis. Like you heard clips of things, but you're not necessarily like seeking it out. It's more so being forced upon you by existing in this world. What are your thoughts?
Um, my first initial thought was honestly, I am so surprised. Like I consistently like her, surprise releases and her second halves far more than her firsts. Um, I do think it's funny how, as a fandom at large, we were all predicting it to be about one person, and for the most part, it was about an entirely different person that 90% of us had no idea was actually that big of a deal,
Yeah.
myself included. But I think honestly, after the first four songs, it's some of her most strong, powerful writing in a long time. The first four songs were not my favorite, I will be honest with you there. But after those four, once you got to So Long London and went after that, I really enjoyed it. The anthology is still my favorite half, but I like both. Um, it comes more down to if you really dig into the weeds of like the history, the second half feels more like what Folklore and Evermore would have been, and everybody's speculating that that's actually what the third, like it's parts of the supposed third album that was supposed to come out, Woodvale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is very likely given the timeline that it represents, that there's elements
Yes.
of Woodvale or whatever we thought Woodvale was. Carrie,
Yeah.
what about you? What is
So,
it? What's your take
so
on
here,
it?
here are my thoughts, and to be honest, it doesn't have anything to do with the music, to be quite honest, because I haven't listened to it enough to sort of make that kind of comment about. But here's the question that I have. It's like, when does she do these things? Like, we all have 24 hours in a day, right? I mean, she's obviously been on a tour, which has been a worldwide tour. Doing all of it. When is she writing these songs? When is she recording these songs? When is she making? When? Somebody tell me when the hell this is freaking happening, because I just can't explain it. I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm dropping a surprise album, and it's like, okay, 5 or 10 songs or something, but 31. Um, and it's not like this is album like 2 or 3. You know what I mean? It's like most people, artists, right, spend their entire life before they make their
Hmm.
um first album, and that first album is basically encompasses everything that's happened in their life, and it's usually the most personal experience. It's usually the most deep experience because they've been waiting their entire life to do it, right?
Hmm.
um and then there's always that struggle of, well, what am I going to do next? What am I going to write about next? What am I going to explore next? And she continues to do that. And to me, musically or not, that is sort of the thing that grabs my attention the absolute most. That's what impresses me the most, right? And it's not things that continue to sound the same. It's not things that continue to share like the same themes and motives and that sort of thing. It's 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 freaking amazing, and I just need to know how the hell she does it. Someone help me understand this.
It's like
It
science fiction, and also it's the fact that we see a lot in the latest album, or I guess if you consider it two albums, that she's really leaning into being a poet. It's not just a songstress, and I think a lot of the magic of it comes from the poetry of the lyrics. We've seen through her past several albums, she's got this kind of hypnotic grasp of what makes a tune catchy, what makes a tune something where you can sing along to it. You know, there's kind of two categories of artists. There's the artists I think of like um, Sia or Beyonce, love both of them. I'm not going to sing along to it. I can't. They're way far above me, like vocally in every possible way. Like they're not like sing along artists. So you have somebody like Taylor Swift who creates like these sing along songs where it's like, that's accessible to me. There's no high notes, there's no runs, there's nothing where it's like, so we've seen so far that she's created this brand of accessible music, and now she's kind of matching it to her poetry. And I think that kind of almost it sounds like more difficult, but it almost like that frees up time, because the magic of like the writing of the poetry does not necessarily have to happen in studio, and that's something that can kind of be continuously ongoing. I don't know, that's my speculation. I think it has to do with like her mastery of lyrics, and then her ability to like put something into music, a particularly like accessible catchy music that like basic people like myself who can't sing can sing along to. That's kind of creating this. Now we've suddenly got the modern version of 31 campfire songs.
mm, it it also feels like, in the early 2015 to, maybe even as late as 2022, had kind of this cultural shift of how we viewed her as like, this big pop star and like the life of the party. But if you think back to like when she first came on the scene, her entire image was like, I am quiet small town girl, girl next
Mhm.
door. Like I am the nerdy girl in the class that takes
Yeah.
like is just writing and filling journals all the time. And that's the part that's never changed. And it's just like she's finally come back and gone, no, I'm still that. I'm still that person. I'm not like I'm selling out, stadiums, and that's why everybody knows my name. But to be honest, when I'm not doing that, I'm still filling journals. Like, that's what I'm doing the entire day.
It has to be. Because the other side of that is right. If you put out, and I assume that she's a considerable editor as well, right? So if you put out 31 songs, you probably add 40 or 50, right? That's all right. I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna let it go.
It's pretty incredible, even to be putting out a new album every. I guess it's 2 years at this point. To put out an album of that volume. Well,
Mhm.
something else that came out since we last met that I know we talked about a little bit because some of us, and by some of us I mean me, we're pretty big fans of Zendaya over here. Her very highly anticipated new movie called The Challengers came out, featuring two men whose names I do not know. And I went and saw it, and it was so good. And did either of you see it? And have you seen the like AP literature discourse that has followed it?
I have not seen it yet. It's on the list of I want to see it. I have, however, seen the AP literature analysis. I have also seen the top tier memes of
So
comparing similar trios.
100%. Carrie, what about you?
I have not seen it, but the bigger question I have is, has Tom Holland seen it? And probably not. Maybe here. Well, would he want to see it? And I'm pretty sure he has. And obviously, I'm just joking. But from what I can tell and what I've seen so far, it goes there in some ways, and it's like you just always sort of wonder. It's like, okay, hey, babe, I'm going to go to my premiere. You might want to sit this one out.
See, if memory serves, there really isn't a lot slash almost any sex in the movie. There aren't even a lot of like sexually charged scenes, considering like the whole premise of the movie is like she's sort of bouncing back and forth between two partners in a way. It's like about tennis, and it's all a metaphor, and who's in charge and who knows what, and who's the villain and who's the hero, and who, that kind of thing. That's where all the speculation comes into play. It's really not overly sexualized at all. It is more so a matter of where is the emotional intimacy and what is it causing people to do and who knows how to control who. So it's about control and intimacy and romance and fighting and more AP literature topics and less sex, but they sure marketed it with sex. Like the whole scene that you see all of the clips and all the whatever of them, both kissing her on the bed and like the flashback when they're younger type of thing. It's like 2 seconds and it's like not very centralized, and they don't hook up and nobody's clothes come off, and it's not like it's so interesting how what was marketed to me was not what I got. Thank goodness, because I don't like to see male pleasure in any movie. I definitely don't want to see two males be happy in the same movie, by any stretch of the imagination. So I am happy that they weren't happy, and that's that on that. But overall, the just go into it expecting a movie that you can like kind of ruminate on, and like who was actually, what was everybody's goal and what were their motivate, like the AP literature questions, but about something that's actually interesting. What was their goal? What were they trying to accomplish when they said this? Did they mean this or this?
Mhm.
Write me 3 paragraphs on why so and so, what is the metaphor of the tennis ball in this scene? Like it's, yeah, it's so great.
Kimmy, you know better than to challenge me into doing that, right?
I have challenged you. You will. It was made for you, Kate. It was literally made for you. Other than the fact that there's not enough women in it, but other like you, yeah,
So
you'll appreciate it.
so here's the question. Not taking myself out of this, right? So based on what their promotional material was, the marketing was, do you anticipate that there were people who went into the film and maybe were disappointed in terms of, disappointed might not be the right word, but or perhaps sort of surprised by what they got as opposed to what they expected?
Yes. Can I say what demographic and nobody's allowed to be mad at me?
Well, I know who would have been. It's like, wait, what are we doing here? I know. You don't. You can say it, but I already know.
Men who would not have taken an AP English class in high school would have watched this movie for Zendaya and have been disappointed in the second half. And they would not understand the message. In my judgmental opinion, yes, is the answer to your question.
And which is absolutely what I expect. I obviously when you do marketing promotion, you make a choice, and so it's like, well, we know which audience we're going to get, and it's like, well, who else could we get in here, and maybe they might be pleasantly surprised, or either they're going to be disappointed, but either way, we got them through the door once, right? That we probably
Right.
would have never gotten anyway.
Yeah. It was so entertaining though. Like I feel like even if you kind of don't understand everything that's going on, there's some cool which like you know me, I don't always understand everything that's going on either. So don't take me as like the pinnacle of, like getting it. You know what I mean? Like I'll trust Kate's analysis once she gets a chance to see it. But I got the vibes. But even if you're not necessarily understanding everything that's going on, it's just really good performances, high drama, and then there's some really cool things they do with how they shot the movie, especially during tennis matches, that's very like kind of artsy and engaging, and the soundtrack's cool. So even if you're kind of just there for the vibes are good. And I was willing to be just there for the vibes. Well, once you guys have had a chance to see it, we will revisit that on the what you guys have watched this week. But for now, we will go to what you guys have actually watched this week. And Carey, I will toss it to you first. Can you tell us what you've watched this week?
I certainly can. I will preface this by saying I've basically reverted back to my childhood because essentially all I've watched are cartoons. Strangely and interestingly enough, though, none of these cartoons are essentially aimed at children. Um, but I've been watching, obviously, X-Men '97, um, the animated series, which just aired its ninth of 10 episodes in its first season. And I think I remember asking this question before about was there a show from whether it's from your childhood or from whatever period of time that you sort of wished or hoped that they would sort of like reboot, remake, or at least extend from where it left off. And what I will say is this: the fear of that is always, well, they're going to take something that you liked or appreciated, and they're never going to make it as good as you either remember or as good as you would sort of want it to be with the continuation story. And I'm not going to spoil anything here, but all I can say is if you liked the X-Men the animated series, the people who have done this show love it. They have a passion for it, and all they've done is take what was laid before and basically built on it and made this significantly better. Which is, to be honest, I did not know that it was something that could still be done by Marvel. If this is any sort of indication of the Marvel that we should be getting or could be getting as we go forward post Endgame. And I know they had a lot of stumbles so far and what have you. But if they can generate the type of continuity, the type of vision that they've experienced, that they've demonstrated with this series and the rest of the properties they do moving forward, Marvel should be in good hands. So yeah, I've been watching that. I cannot wait for the finale. Basically they've taken all the things that you love about the show, they've built on them, they've turned them on their head. They it's without fail almost the end of every episode. I'm like, WTF? I can't believe they've done that. And so it's been incredibly fantastic, and I highly recommend it. The other thing that I've been watching, or at least it came out on May the 4th, because May the 4th be with you, Star Wars. Um, they had an animated short, like 6 episodes, called Tales of the Empire. If you remember,
Mhm.
I think about a year or so ago, they did Tales of the Jedi, where they focused on quote unquote protagonists. This run was basically focused on, I guess, who you would either call antagonists, or I like antagonists, I don't like villains. But Barriss Offee and Morgan Elsbeth. Um, not getting too far in the weeds about who these characters are, but I think the most common thread between both of them is that they have either sort of experienced grief, um, and despair and loss in their life, and then the question is, well, how did they respond to it? And you sort of get a sense of, obviously based on who each of these two characters are, what they've been through, what their life experiences are, how that sort of colors how they respond to things, and sort of where they, because obviously you can have either a path of vengeance or you can have sort of a path of redemption or whatever the case may be. But I think both of these characters gives you sort of a sense of what what the impacts were on their lives and sort of how they responded to it. So if nothing else, whether you like Star Wars or not, you sort of get to see these two significant arcs of how people deal with grief and loss, and how it fuels them, and what it turns them into. Um, so the like I said, 6 episodes. They're usually like about shorts, probably about maybe 15, 20 minutes tops. So even if you're not like the biggest Star Wars fans, you can feel like you can sort of jump into these things, get sort of like a encapsulated story, and sort of and it's sort of like a really good way, I think, also to bring people in, like I said, who aren't like really big Star Wars fans, but it's like, hey, I could sit down for 15, 20 minutes, watch this. If it hooks you, then maybe it takes you to the greater universe. So I think they did a really good job with it. And those have been the two things that I've been watching because I'm just a big kid who loves cartoons.
It's kind of that time of year where like we want that kind of comfort, coming out of winter and spring and into summer, and we want the nostalgic things, school is ending, and the TV being offered to us to a large extent has some gaps in filling what we're actually looking for. So you mentioned that you've got Tales of the Empire, and that is following what previously I think was pretty well received, which was Tales of the Jedi. Did one kind of hit you stronger? Is one kind of building on another in terms of quality and delivering kind of an engaging storyline?
Um, I think there were two in particular, it has more to do with, obviously these are obviously character driven sort of tales, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it the things that sort of hooked me and sort of my favorite was the one that focused on Count Dooku. Again, not getting too far lost in the weeds, but he essentially is a character who um, is had sort of like virtues and ideals, and is sort of led astray by an institution that he believed in, had faith in, thought should be better, saw its shortcomings, wanted to find a way to make improvements to it, and someone who he was a victim of someone who preyed upon that and used him for that. And so this was an opportunity to show more of his story that we hadn't really seen in the movie. So that was one that I really appreciated, and that was from obviously in the Tales of the Jedi. Um, Tales of the Empire, there was a sort of a similar character who had sort of I guess I'm a sucker for a similar type of art, um, but essentially was a member of the Jedi, but saw the shortcomings and failings of the Jedi and tried to point them out. Maybe not necessarily in the most productive or efficient or effective way, but nonetheless pointed out the shortcomings that they had. And they were real shortcomings that, as we sort of later came to see. And then so we sort of get an opportunity to see what happened to her after the aftermath of trying to bring those shortcomings to light, and how it obviously impacted her and her journey. So those were two of my favorites. I just sort of like seeing complicated characters, whether protagonists or antagonists, sort of deal with or recover from sort of slights and betrayals from people that they trust.
Yeah. It's kind of the reverse of a redemption. So coming back from somebody else's fallen arc. Yeah, that is interesting. Well, Kate, you are up. Have you also fallen prey to the bug that Carey and spoilers I have of leaning towards comfort, nostalgic, etc. shows, or do you bring us something new?
Yes to both, actually, and
Okay.
both in the same show. So it's a show that I have previously talked about years ago, which it feels weird to say years in reference to this, but truly, honestly, I watched season one previously of All Creatures Great and Small. Nobody else was really watching it, talking about it, so I kind of fell off of watching about it. And then a couple of weeks ago, I just needed something kind of comforting because I was feeling kind of sick and just wanted something easy to watch. Threw it on, watched all four seasons, and now it is, if not my favorite show I've ever talked about on here, it is only second to Critical Role and WandaVision. That is all that it beats it.
I cannot believe there's a show in the same sentence as WandaVision for you. This is huge. Please go on.
Yes. So it is a completely different vibe. Let me be clear. So it is based on these novels, like semi-autobiographical novels written in the 70s and 80s by a man who, under the pen name James Harriet, he was a veterinarian in the English countryside in Yorkshire, and he treated kind of farm animals as well as, cats, dogs, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And the show follows his fictionalized retelling of his life, where he, moves to this area, comes into the practice under this eccentric senior vet and his family, and he meets this woman. He immediately, I mean, head over heels in love with this woman, only to find out she's already with some other guy, and she goes and gets engaged to him. And season one ends with her calling off her wedding the day of. And so it kind of devolves into that. It's very, very wholesome, but not, it is low angst, but not low dynamics.
Okay.
So there is stress, there's sadness, there's emotional buy-in at every turn, but it's not like, when we're watching superhero shows, it's not the end of the world. It's,
Mhm.
this cow's going to die, and we feel really bad that this cow's sick, and we're really stressed because it represents the livelihood of the people that they know.
Mhm.
In each season, you get to know more and more about the characters, kind of around them, as well as in the area. So you start to notice different connections between the different farmers in the area. But it mainly follows him, the three other people that work at the veterinary practice, and this one woman he falls in love with. And she is one of my favorite characters of all time. I love her so much.
What's her name?
Her name is Helen.
Helen.
And so she, I mean, in season one, she kind of acts as a supporting role.
Mhm.
And in season two, kind of starts up as kind of becoming a more main character. And in three and four, she's a main character fully. She kind of carries the role of like practical heart of the show.
Okay.
Um, very, very deals with a lot of men all of the time. So therefore is unfazed by any man type presence, and she kind of fills the screen. But the other great thing about the show, I think, is actually the writing,
Okay.
especially the dialogue, in that it doesn't overuse dialogue. If it can snip a line, it will. Um, there's tons of silent moments that they're able to use a look or a pause or a pan to some other thing to draw like visual parallels or use spatial awareness within scene direction to tell a story within itself. And I think to tell it more effectively than dialogue ever can. Um, and I think that the way they do it, it's almost magical, and yet still feels very warm and nostalgic. Like if we're watching Downton Abbey, it even kind of feels like I'm watching Great British Bake Off. Like it's just warm to watch, even when there's sad things, even when it's a very frigidly cold show,
Mhm.
because they are in this cold atmosphere. Um, all of the big moments always happen on Christmas. It is really, really good, and it happens as they're leading up to World War II. So there, you do start to get into World War II and the effects of that having in the nation.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it is generally just like this warm show, and I think everybody should watch it. It's great.
You have somebody in the chat agreeing with you. Steph says, "Oh wow, that makes me want to watch Kate. My parents have been recommending All Creatures to me for ages, and I was always reluctant, but listening to how great the characters say, I think I'm gonna watch." Steph, if I know you, it sounds absolutely like something you would love. I happen to know Steph did enjoy Miss Eliza and the Duke. Kate, would you say it's kind of in the same vein where like it's not the same story, but if you like one, you might like the other?
You might. I mean, it's on Masterpiece, so they both have the similar kind of, you know, shine of cinematography and use. It's a lot brighter, it's a lot more colorful than Miss Scarlet and the Duke,
Yeah.
that uses a lot more dull colors. I think on a visual standpoint, it has like the same level of, there's an attention to detail that's impressive for such a low budget show.
Mm-hmm.
It also has very good writing for the characters, but I would also say the tone is very different from Miss Scarlet and the Duke. Um, it's hard to kind of pin down exactly what the tone is. I will say, like, I know the ethos of the show kind of came from a point, like the production started in 2015, where they were going through Brexit at the time, and
Yeah.
so the entire idea was like a show that will bring people together, families together of whatever political beliefs or understandings, and it's just more of the kind of ethos of the entire show really is community and the power of kindness and community, which is a really great thing. Just it's a beautiful thing to watch, even for my like cold heart and soul. And so it it has similar elements to Miss Scarlet and the Duke, but I will say the tone is very different. So if you're expecting that, you're not going to get that.
Carey has a question.
Yes.
So, what can you tell me about how they handle it? Because if I heard you correctly, you said that Helen is her name, right?
Hmm.
Left her husband at the altar, or right before that she was going to get. So, how did they handle that in a way where either she remained sympathetic, or you know what I mean? Because it's easy. Because it would be easy. I'm thinking about like the beginning of
What's
Friends, right?
unsympathetic about blowing up your wedding day of? That seems like a
No,
completely normal thing to do.
Because
Carrie, the can of
I'm thinking about
worms you just
Friends.
opened.
I'm thinking about Friends and
I
Rachel. She did the same thing, and it was really difficult to make that character
Yes.
sympathetic, right? So,
So I think they do a lot of legwork even before it happens. So they, first of all, make it very clear that the main character, the main protagonist, is already having strong feelings for her. And so because you have the buy-in of the main protagonist, you want him to end up with the girl he likes. That's just how that works. The other part of it is very clearly, as you're seeing her in her relationship with the guy she's first with, um, it's clear that they have an affection for each other, they have a bond, but because of the time setting, it's already kind of hinted at that they're more just friends and it's a marriage of convenience.
Mm.
There's some like economic reasons for why they would be marrying each other, and honestly, it's just because like they had family members die at the same time that like their grief kind of brought them together, and they were friends, they were pals in school. It just made sense. And then it's throughout the after her engagement, you see more her interact more and more with the main character James, and it's in the quiet moments that you very clearly see her going, "Wait a minute, I think I feel more strongly about this random guy I just met a few months ago than the guy I've been dating, I've been seeing." And in the Christmas finale, it is the entire storyline is her kind of being exposed to this old married couple who are very deeply in love and very like just loving and tender. And after all these years, very clearly and still in love. And it's kind of her watching James take care of this animal and seeing how she feels and realizing her feelings towards James are far closer than uh, her feelings towards James are far more similar to this couple that she's seeing than her feelings towards Hugh. And she is coming to terms with that. And then the wedding is the next day. It is Christmas Day, and she goes to her wedding and is in the wedding dress, goes through the motions, but instead of looking like she's going to her wedding, she looks like she's going to a funeral. That's how like just upset she looks. Gets to the wedding. You don't even see her call it off. You don't see the scene where she tells him this isn't going to happen. You see him go into the church after she's called it off. You see him, James go in and console her. And his take on it is kind of you're I know it hurts. I know it sucks. I know you don't want to hurt anybody, but if you had gone through with this, more people would have been hurt. It would have been more unkind in the long run. And this is before he even understands that she has feelings for him, even though he knows he has feelings for her. This is a simple interaction of a friend comforting a friend and understanding like you need to hear that it is less cruel to do this now than to have drawn it out. And then the next season starts with her kind of going through this process of forgiving herself for the drama, for the pain that she caused. Um, they also do really beautiful things with the cinematography as well. So, like in that scene where James goes and consoles her, she's still in her wedding dress, and then he takes her hand and walks her back down the aisle. Visual storytelling, just at its finest, honestly. But yeah, the first episode of the next season, it is a storyline about forgiving this dog, and they use the story parallels really well to say, you know, people make mistakes. Your one choice here does not define you, and you need to learn to forgive yourself and like go back out into society. Like you're allowed to hang out with your friends. You're not an evil person for choosing not to marry this dude.
Well, I'm sold. Sounds like Steph is sold. She also says, good question, Carey. And she says, as long as they don't ship one character off to America, I am willing to watch. It sounds like we all have some PTSD. It sounds like everybody I've seen on my social media has PTSD. Miss
Hmm.
Eliza and the Duke was really filling a niche for us. And Kate, thank you for bringing the antidote. All Creatures Great and Small sounds fantastic. I remember it being recommended to me way back in the day, like way back when like Arrow was airing. And somebody who was watching Arrow also recommended that. It's like, okay, stay with me here. If you like Arrow, you're going to like this just because of like character development or something to that effect.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear it brought back. Last question, and then I'm going to dive into what I watched this week. Is it
Hmm.
currently still being made, or is it like a closed canon?
Yes. So season 4, because it's kind of on the weird airing schedule with Miss Scarlet, where it's going to air in the UK earlier. I don't know exactly when, but season 4 came out pretty recently. They've been renewed for season 5 and 6. They
Okay.
are short seasons. They are 6 episodes of the normal season, and then I think which ends in like October.
Hmm.
And then they have a seventh additional episode, which is always the finale, and it's also always the Christmas episode.
I'm totally fine with a short season. That sounds absolutely
Mhm.
fantastic. And it sounds a lot more wholesome than what I am bringing to you this week, as what I've watched this week. But I do bring honesty. What I lack in quality, I'm going to make up for in honesty. So, the first one that I've been watching, and the finale of this show was just released today. I will be watching it directly after we close tonight's broadcast, is The Circle, specifically season 6 of The Circle. It's a social deception reality show wherein people don't get to interact with each other in person. So they can be catfishing or they cannot be catfishing. It's essentially a popularity contest to try not to get eliminated, similar to Survivor, Big Brother, anything in that genre of just trying to be the last person standing, but with the twist of you don't ever actually see each other. It's so good. This season has been fantastic. You don't have to watch all the seasons to get the subsequent seasons. It's always new people every time. And I know what you're thinking, but reality shows are trash and they're all awful. And what do you mean Netflix made? Stay with me. This latest season was filmed in Atlanta, which kind of to an extent doesn't matter because they still have people from all over the country. But if you happen to enjoy some of the Southern twist and culture brought to it, you will appreciate this latest season. And what I really liked is this latest season, because it is now season 6, had a lot of game players, people who have studied the past few seasons, have studied game. They're not just catfishing as like, I'm going to catfish as the person who I think is going to be most popular, or I'm going to flirt my way into the final 5, or like that kind of thing, but actually bringing game. And maybe it does involve catfishing, and maybe it does involve flirting their way to whatever, but they're openly and transparently discussing the technical background of their gameplay. And I really appreciate that in the latest season. It's not just something you kind of have to like read between the lines or understand what they're doing, but they're still like, oh, teehee, but I do really like Kyle. Like they're openly discussing their gameplay and the kind of cutthroat negotiations behind it. Not everybody, but a decent chunk. And I loved that. So if you are at all interested in kind of the mechanisms and the gameplay behind a kind of like final elimination, social deception genre of game. The latest season of The Circle, fantastic. I don't know if a game player or a catfish or whatever is going to win tonight's episode. We have left at this point multiple game players and multiple people who are just like, I'm just here for the connections and to have a good, whatever. Like, they're game players, but they're not sharing their strategy with the audience. They're less generous with their strategy. So I don't know whether a game player is going to win, but I know that game players got highlighted a lot this season, and it wasn't in the like, oh, we're going to give a negative edit to this person because they're being manipulative, when it's like, of course they're being manipulative. It's a social deception show. Like, grow up. Anyways. So highly recommend. The other one, Pretty Little Liars Original Sin. Now, I, being old, was raised on the original Pretty Little Liars. Fantastic, shaped my entire identity, 100 out of 10. When Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, put out by HBO Max, now Max, was announced, I think whatever it was, I think maybe 2 years ago or something at this point, I was like, okay, great, glad we're bringing it back for another generation, but I'm not necessarily sure I'm going to watch because I'm so attached to the original characters and this, that, the other, And Pretty Little Liars had already attempted a spinoff, Ravenwood, I think it was called, based around a man, which was their first fall, or based around a teen boy played by like a 35-year-old. I didn't really care for that. I like the original Pretty Little Liars. Couldn't care less about the men. Turns out one of the original Pretty Little Liars cast said recently on a podcast that the men were paid more than the women on this show. Hate all of y'all. Anyways, the new Pretty Little Liars Original Sin is dropping a second, I think, short season this summer called Pretty Little Liars Original Sin Summer School, or like something. It's like a 3-part title. So I got strong-armed into giving Pretty Little Liars Original Sin Season 1 a shot. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. It fully captures the vibe and the tone of the original Pretty Little Liars while still being kind of its own unique thing. There's not like high character crossover or constant callbacks or anything like that. Just a little bit, just a touch here and there to where you can see it's in the same universe, but still sort of captures that same, like, we're always being watched, and this is a very, like, nod to a bunch of film genres vibe that the original Pretty Little Liars had, the kind of the melodrama and the over the top and the hand above the level of your eye kind of nature of it, where it's like, you embrace the cheese or stop watching, like, absolutely captures it. The season was fantastic. The ending was like the exact kind of like unsatisfying sort of like, but wait, but what about this that you've come to expect of Pretty Little Liars, where like, don't watch it for the end, watch it for the journey. I'm so excited to dive into summer school with these 30-year-olds playing high schoolers. It's going to be great. Highly recommend that as well if you like the original Pretty Little Liars.
I have a very specific question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a character in there named Imogen who is pregnant at one point and then like gets choked out or something?
100%. Yeah, of course there is.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
I kept on seeing about it on Twitter and like just kept on seeing this one specific storyline and that was it. And then it disappeared.
Yes, you could expect nothing less than a character inexplicably named Imogen, who is a pregnant teen. Of course, she's like 30 in real life, I'm sure, but who is a pregnant teen in like cottagecore clothes, who's like always kind of scared and staring wide-eyed at the camera, and like falls down on concrete, gets choked out, ends up in a burning building, all sorts of stuff, but delivers the baby in the finale, and everybody's perfectly fine. So, of course, yes, it is that type of show. Exactly.
Okay, cool.
100%. We have a very, very limited amount of time left for our Woman of the Week. So everybody's going to get 60 seconds for their Woman of the Week. Carey, you listened long and patiently through that Pretty Little Liars thing. I'm going to let you go first on Woman of the Week.
All right. My Woman of the Week is Women of the Week. The WNBA season starts on Tuesday, May the 14th. So all of the fantastic athletes that we fell in love with in college basketball get to make their regular season debuts. Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, Caitlin Clark, obviously. unfortunately, you probably are going to have to check local listings to find out when these games are and like where you can watch them because there hasn't been the greatest marketing effort. They're sort of dropping the ball on that, but I'm going to think positively. So all of the women who are going to make up the WNBA season are my women of.
So excited for them. I actually signed up for like pre-sale tickets for the local NBA team here. They sent me a text saying I was about to get a code for pre-sale tickets and I never got the code, which poor one out, but also glad there's high demand. Kate, who is your woman of the week?
Okay, so I read two more Emily Henry books. They were both good, but the one I preferred was Book Lovers, and it has to do with the fact that the main character is called the Shark. She is a career professional. She is a literary agent with a dream of actually being a book editor, and learns that she has the reputation of being the shark, who kind of is cutthroat and everything, and she takes offense to that. She's not really happy with that mark, and is on vacation with her little sister and basically commits to completing the trope list with her little sister to kind of say like oh hurrah basically, and it goes through her kind of coming to terms with she's actually okay with being called the shark because it's all these different things, and it was really touching, and it is my favorite Emily Henry book I've read so far, and I've already recommended him before to you, so I highly recommend this one.
Absolutely on my list. I'm so excited to be in a season where I can dive back into books. I've got a few in progress. My women of the week are the entire cast of Stay With Me, the new UK show that just dropped this week entitled I Kissed a Girl. Now, listen. I know you guys don't like reality shows, okay? I get it. And you're not going to like the premise of this show either, wherein everybody's gay, so immediately you should be sold, otherwise you're homophobic. But the immediate, like, two women are matched, like all the cast are women, and then they're matched with each other based on like who's the ideal match. And then when they're first introduced, they have to kiss. And then they meet all the rest of the cast, and then you decide whether you're staying with your match or whether you find a better match amongst all of the other women there. The women on the, like, okay, so premise cheesy, production quality just okay. Okay, it's like a BBC reality show. But the women on this show are so fantastic. When I say fantastic, I mean like a mix between like really high quality, like excellent folks and like crazy drama and interesting this and this person's kind of like mean and this person's super like they just cover the whole like personality spectrum so well. Everybody's lovely. Like it's just the serotonin that went through my brain, y'all, when I was watching this needs to be like bottled and studied. It is so good. You need to watch this show. It is fantastic. The first two episodes are out. I think the third episode drops at some point this weekend. I will be glued to my screen. It absolutely just pure happiness, and it is because of the cast just delivering reality show gold. Incredible. The next time we all talk, half of, or maybe more than half, depending on how they split it, of the latest season of Bridgerton, the Penelope season, technically Penelope and Colin, but I don't like him. So Penelope season will have dropped. I'm absolutely beside myself. I cannot wait to discuss that with y'all. And when I say y'all, I mean both of y'all. You are going to have to watch it. You are forced to watch it. You have to watch it.
I was just going to say that I may very well surprise you by I don't know. It may be the Cliff Notes version of it that I catch up with. I don't know, but I will come prepared. I'll just say that.
I'm going to sell it to you, Carey. The lead character in the latest season is a secret journalist.
Okay.
That's all.
Because that worked for me on this new remake of The Office. It's supposed to be focused on Midwestern journalists. So
yeah, with like volunteer writers. I saw that cover and I was so excited about that. I will be glued. Absolutely. It activated something millennial in me when that was announced. I will be at my most embarrassing form. I'm excited. Carey, you and I can discuss, and Kate can judge us. It'll be great.
Hey, I've watched The Office.
Okay, all right. I I feel less judged now. Not like, well, you can judge us anyways, Kate.
Thanks.
Thank y'all for watching. Kate and Carey's information's in the description down below. And I will talk to y'all after Santa brings us Bridgerton season 3. Bye.